continue with our morning blessings. We are on 194. Audrey, would you like to read for us on 194? Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei Chol Basar, Umafli La'asot. Thank you, Audrey. And continuing on 196, Shirley, would you like to continue for us? Baruch atah Adonai asher biado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol basar ish. Thank you, Shirley. 198, we find the beginning to Nisim b'chol yom, these blessings that have us acknowledge the miraculous that comes with starting a new day, that even as we begin our day, we have so much to be thankful for, a home to live in, clothes to wear, food to eat, that we're not to take any of it for granted. And as is our custom, as you know, before we chant these blessings, we share any good news we might have, any of your own miraculous moments, large or small. Larry? I believe that. Very good. Very good. Shirley?
My oldest granddaughter, Sarah, who is a professor of biology at Penn State, went to Vienna with biology conference. And thank God she made it, came back safely.
Yes. Yes, thank God. Well, for all of the good, and hopefully there's much more good to come. We're very much in need of good news these days and good developments all the time, God willing. We join in Nisim b'chol yom, beginning on 198. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'sek v'ivina, lehavchin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, okeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Matir Asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Zokef Kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hamechim mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Malbish Arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hanoten liyaef koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hama'avir sheina me'enai, Utnuma me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, She'asani b'tzelem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'gevura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Oter Yisrael betifara. We continue with the blessing for the study of Torah at the top of page 204. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. We do continue with Chatzi Kaddish, which you can find on page 224. Please rise. Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabbah B'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon u'vyomechon U'chayei techol Beit Yisrael B'agala b'agala U'bizman karim B'meru Amen Yehei shemei Rabbah mivorach Le'olam u'l'almei almaya Yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei dekudesha b'richu Le'olam min kol birchata v'shirata Tushpechata v'nechemata Damiram b'alma b'meru. Amen. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Baruch hu et Adonai Hamivorach Hamivorach Baruch Adonai Hamivorach Le'olam Le'olam Va'ed. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due, now and forever. As we remain standing, we can pray together at the bottom of 228 as we say, Praised are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai. In wisdom you form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created. May they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMeorot. We sing Shema together, page 232. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. You may be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta b'am B'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'aderech u'shochbecha uvkumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai V'tem kedoshim leloechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Asher hotzeiti adchem me'eretz Mitzrayim. Liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. We join together in our song of freedom as we celebrate our freedom and acknowledge how fortunate we are to be able to live our lives as Jews in freedom and practice our faith in freedom. And even as we are so well aware and so fortunate, we acknowledge too that there are many around our world who are not as free and who are still living under the burden of persecution and prejudice for the sake of the color of their skin or the religion that they practice, those who are not yet fully free. And so we vow once more as we sing these words, these ancient words, that we will continue to work in the name of freedom for all peoples. Mi Chamocha can be found at the top of page 240. Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha Nedar B'Kodesh, Norah Tehilot Osefele, Shira Chadasha Shibechu Geulim, L'Shimcha Al Sifatayam, Yachad Kulam Hodu, V'Himlichu V'Yameru, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'em. Sor Yisrael, Kuma Be'ezrat Yisrael, Uftechenu Mecha, Yehuda V'Yisrael, Go Aleinu Adonai Tzivot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch Atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. Our tefillah can be found beginning on page 242 in your prayer book. Please rise. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi tehillah. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei V'Neihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen. Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim. Somech Noflim Verofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Baal Givurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit, Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Atah L'Hachayot HaKol. Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechaye HaKol. Nekadesh et Shimcha Ba'olam, Keshem Shemakdishim Oto Bishmei Marom, Kakatuv Aliyad Neviecha, V'kara Ze El Ze Ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivaot, Melochol haaretz kivodo. Adir adirenu Adonai Adonenu Ma'adir Shimcha b'chol haaretz. Baruch kivod Adonai mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu hu Malkeinu, hu Moshienu v'hu Yashmienu, b'rachamav le'enei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai leolam, Elohai Yitzion, Ledor Vador. Hallelujah. Ledor Vador Nagid God Lecha, Ule Netzach Netzachim Kedushatcha Nakdish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu, Mipinu lo yamush leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh. We may be seated. Modim anachnu lach, a prayer of thanksgiving, can be found on page 256. And there we can say together, we acknowledge with thanks that you are Adonai, our God, and the God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one whose mercies never end, O compassionate one whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name be forever praised and blessed. O God, our Redeemer and Helper, let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. Our service continues with Sim Shalom as we pray for greater peace in our world, greater kindness and empathy, and that all places affected by violence and hostility, enmity, come to a place of greater togetherness and greater peacefulness, and God willing soon. Sim Shalom can be found on page 258. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. V'rachamim. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amecha sim shalom tova uvracha. Sim shalom tova uvracha. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of our world. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses your people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamivarech et amo Yisrael, b'shalom. We'll pause for a moment now for the sake of our own silent and personal prayers. Continue now with the service for the reading of Torah, which you can find beginning in your prayer book on page 364. Please rise. Ki mitzion teitzei Torah, Ki mitzion teitzei Torah, Udevar Adonai, Mirushalayim, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, V'likdushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadol Adonai Iti, U'neromema Shemo Yavdav. We may be seated. As is our custom before turning to this morning's Torah portion, we pause to offer a prayer for healing for those in our lives and those in our community, those around the world in need of healing. And it goes without saying that there are so many struggling with illness and the effects of illness, so many living with pain. Now is the time we pray for them, and we pray together in the name of their return to wellness and strength. As a congregational community on this Shabbat morning, our prayers are very much with Ileana Cohn, Rick Ulrich, Lynn Romsberg, Jerry Dreskin, Ann Marsden, Stephen Trombecki, Sarah Oken, Gary Garnick, Michael Infanti, Shirley Friedlander, Stephen Rose, Robert Weiner, Dr. Sam Friedman, Jen Jones, Paula Friedman, Richard Sabin, Jocelyn Jackson, Samira Ranika, Yuri Huen, Eddie Rosen, Mary Midnitsky, Nick Bowd, Tikva Moshava, Murray Kammerman, Flora Hans, Rick Forenau, and Nigel Weston. If there's a name you'd like to add to this list, someone for whom you offer a Mishaberach, a prayer for healing, please feel free to rise and do so now as my glance meets yours. Mishaberach, our prayer for healing, can be found on page 371. Mishaberach Avotenu Mikor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Amen. So this week we do turn to the Torah portion of Shoftim as we're making our way steadily through the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Devarim, the fifth and final book of our Torah, of course, as we march steadily to the end of our Jewish year, and thus towards the end of the Torah as well. And as I've been saying for the last few weeks, Deuteronomy really entails a sort of final teaching, a final pep talk from Moses to the Israelites as they prepare for life without him, as they prepare for life in the Promised Land. And so we often have sort of a great review of where we've been, where we've traveled, the mitzvot that perhaps we've learned about already. And Moses, like a good teacher, is trying desperately to instill in his students all of the knowledge that they'll need to go forward. A couple key pieces from Shoftim that maybe we'll touch on when we have our chat in a second. One, the very word Shoftim means judges, and the portion will begin with an explanation essentially of this sort of early judicial system that the Israelite people will put in place so that there is a level of justice within the community, and also so that Moses doesn't have to do it alone. That's how the portion will open, by explaining sort of this system and the judges and how does it work. That's one key piece. Another key piece, which I touched on last night, is the sort of premise of these safe havens, these sanctuary cities, where one could go to while awaiting trial. And the very premise of these sort of places, I think, is fascinating. It's not the first time in the Torah that we've read about them, but they do seem to be highlighted here, along with many other mitzvot that you'll see as you flip through the portion. So that's just a little bit about Shoftim. If you'd like to follow in the Torah commentary, and there should be some floating around, there's two here I see, at least two. We are on page 1456. So there's some, and there could be more available should the need arise for the select few of you who have not yet memorized Shoftim. Okay, 1456 is where you find the portion. The blessings for Torah are on page 368 in your prayer book. We can join in those blessings together. Baruch hu et Adonai Hamborah, Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. Shoftim v'shotrin titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha, asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach. V'shivtecha v'shivtu et ha'am mishpat tzedek, lo tita mishpat, lo tachir panim, v'lo tikach shochad, ki shochad yaur einai chmim. V'slaf divrei tzadikim, tzedek tzedek tirdof, lema'an tichiyeh, v'yarishta et ha'aretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach. Lo tita lecha asherah kol eitz eitzel mizbeach Adonai Elohecha asher ta'aseh lecha. Velo takim lecha mibza asher shana Adonai Elohecha. Lo tizbeach l'Adonai Elohecha shur v'sa asher yebo mumchol diber ra ki toivat Adonai Elohecha hu. Let's join in the blessing that comes after our reading. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. And we will hear at least an excerpt from our Haftorah this Shabbat morning, which comes to us from the book of, take a wild guess, Isaiah. You got it. Page 1607 is your page for the Haftorah, if you'd like to follow. And the blessing for Haftorah back in your prayer book, of course, page 372. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'nbiim tovim, v'ratza v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah, u'Moshe avdo, u'Yisrael amo, u'Nbiei ha'emet b'tzedek. Thank you, Hal. Thank you so much. We'll join in the blessing. We have a lot to think about. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzor kol amim tzaddik b'chol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh ha'mdaber u'mkayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek al haTorah v'al avodah v'al hanbiim v'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdushal menucha lechavod u'tifaret Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach uvarchim otach yiparach shimcha v'fi kol chai tamid leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. So as is our way, let's think about Shoftim, let's think about Isaiah, even for just a minute or two. A very full Torah portion, and as I noted, we could sort of take it in various directions. First of all, the very premise of appointing judges and this commitment to a justice system, right? A system that sort of engenders justice and fairness, and how this is so deeply embedded in Jewish peoplehood and Jewish culture and sort of who we are. We have the iconic line, just a few verses into our portion, Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. So that's how the portion starts, and then we get into a little bit of an essay on idolatry. We have then a little bit of an essay on capital punishment and sort of the Jewish understanding of it. We learn about the Levites. As I mentioned, we learn about the sanctuary cities. There's so much here. And then layer Isaiah on top of all that. Isaiah sort of continuing with this theme of you've gone astray, you've done wrong, but it's not too late. You can come back, return to God, return to community, which feels appropriate at this time of year. It's not an accident that we read Isaiah as we approach the high holidays, because these are some of the things that I think we're thinking about too. It's been a long year, we've made our mistakes, we are reevaluating our choices, our words, how can we do better in the coming year? So Isaiah sort of speaks to us. So anyway, enough from me. What do you think? What say you? How? Yep.
So it seems like it takes from you from being a whole group, or the tribe is going to appoint its judges to a view of singularity, and to the person who's going to be that judge.
Nice.
And it's interesting because that's the way our system is today.
Yes.
In those cases, we the people appoint through voting.
That's right.
One another, who our judges are going to be.
Yep.
And then you have to trust them to search for the truth and
You're right.
judicious decisions.
Right, it's really Moses and God empowering the people, saying, I'm not going to do this for you. This is not going to be ordained from on high. It's going to be your responsibility in every generation to seek out and to appoint these people to serve in these roles. And I think that sort of second person, you, is quite telling. The you is not the you only of the Torah, it's the you of today as well. It's sort of this eternal you.
It also goes on further to talk about that person to interpret the law.
Yes,
And that's what we count on today.
that's right.
For the law to be interpreted appropriately. It's not
Whatever
the
that
same
means.
interpretation as it may have been
Yes,
when this was written.
yes.
And that has to be dynamic in
It does.
the modern decision-making process.
I think you're making a great point. The portion assumes that sort of these judges in every generation will have it incumbent upon them to sort of raise up and interpret and sort of bring to life the rules of our people. Right? It's not how Moses interpreted and adjudicated. It's how we in our own time, given what we know. And I think it's so very much in keeping with sort of, and I'm not a lawyer, but with sort of our understanding of American law and the Constitution, what it means to sort of return to the same document and read it through the eyes of today, which is both a blessing that we get to do that, but the source of so much enmity, because we're all going to inevitably read that document differently. Lillian. Thank God. I mean, and we, those of us who have gotten very involved in RAC, New Jersey, the legislation that we advocated for in the spring with regard to what can and cannot be asked on... Right, but I was just making the point that the legislation that we advocated for in the spring regarding what can and cannot be asked on a housing application speaks to that point exactly, that once you've done your time, right, the idea is that the slate should be wiped clean and that you have a new opportunity. And that too is very much a Jewish idea. That's Yom Kippur in a nutshell, right? That we have the opportunity to begin again and that we need not hold our misdeeds over each other all the time, right? As I think I said in a sermon when we were all involved in that advocacy, imagine if you were defined perpetually by your single worst mistake. So yes, all of this, I think all of this sort of feeds together. And the sanctuary city part feeds into that too, this idea of awaiting judgment, right? Sort of resisting judgment until all the facts are known. So there's a lot here that is so relevant in 2021. Other commentary, we could go anywhere in this portion. Goldie. Yes, I think that's important and that's interesting, right? And we can think about that both in Jewish terms and in American terms, right? I think there's much to be said there. Hal?
There's also a separation at the lower level, there's a separation of religion and non-religion as far as the judgment is concerned. Until you get to the highest level, and then all of a sudden there are, you might do whatever, put in that position also to judge on religious grounds.
Right, well,
Which
yeah.
hopefully we will continue to not accept
Right.
as part of our democracy.
Right, that's right. So, the tricky part regarding the portion, the way that the portion differs so much from the world we live in today, in the portion it's essentially all religion, right? The commandments are the laws that you live by, the laws you adhere to, the laws that the judges are holding you to. In today's day and age, we, and this is the story of what it means to be a Jew in America, we are walking the line of two sets of laws all the time, right? Here we are in the synagogue, observing various rulings and ideas that our people have held on to for generations. And the minute you walk out the door, you have to drive the speed limit and you have to stop if there's a red light. And, so we're living by two sets of laws all the time, which the Israelites maybe had the luxury of not having to worry about. Believe me, they had plenty to worry about, but we're sort of perpetually walking this line. And sometimes those laws are in conflict, of course. Any other places we could go with Shoftim, Larry?
Later in the portion, it talks about the protocols of war.
Yes.
And it talks about, he asked a question, it's a key question, are the trees human? Speaking to the, no, they're the victims of the situation.
That's right.
But it also looks to the future as well.
Yeah.
Especially fruit trees and, feed yourself.
That's exactly right. There's that interesting, you're bringing up an interesting moment in this portion, which is, in a time of war, we should not destroy the trees, all the more so the fruit-bearing trees. And there's so much to be said for that, that they shouldn't fall victim to our very sort of human divisions and hatred and politics. That the fruit trees especially are meant to be eternal and ongoing, and they shouldn't be pulled into sort of the dramas that we humans tend to create. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I think that's a really important sort of concept. So there's so much here, and just to touch on it super quick, the little few verses about capital punishment toward the beginning of the portion, I think, are also so telling. First, we have very strong language around idolatry, and that if someone is caught making an idol or praying to an idol, they should be stoned to death. And then immediately after, we have this language that says, well, it's only if there are 2 witnesses or more. And then the Talmud will sort of go further than that and say, and if you know specifically that there was intent, and if there is a witness who can testify to their level of intent. And the Talmud will go so far as to essentially make capital punishment an impossibility in Jewish life. And I think sort of tying all this together, it's a way that the rabbis took the Torah text, saw it through the lens of their own time, realized we're not living in this sort of harsh biblical climate of once upon a time, and essentially said, this feels excessive, to say the least. Let's make sure if we're doing it, it's only if we absolutely have no other choice. And that remains the case certainly in Israel and within Jewish life. I think there's a lot of power there. So I think if we connect the fruit trees and the capital punishment piece and the judges, right, there is this incredible emphasis on justice, on fairness, on giving people a chance, on trying to sort of move away from a place of violence and harshness to a place of togetherness and belief in each other. Closing thoughts, commentary. Ivan.
My
Closing sermon.
I find myself very proud and justified in my Jewish beliefs when I run into a Torah portion like this. Can you imagine the day in which they presented all these details? That the fundamentals of justice haven't changed in all these years.
That's right.
They knew all about it. They paid attention to it. They made it. I am very proud to come from that tradition, and I think we should all be very happy just to study the rest of our lives, because all this emerges. You can't believe what's there.
Yeah.
And when you read the Talmud, you can't believe what's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It deals with everything.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ivan. And I think that tzedek tirdo really sort of captures all of it. Deuteronomy 16:20. I will just say, do we have 30 more seconds? I'll share with you something. Sometimes I remember these verses, like the actual verse. No, I don't remember every single verse number. But Deuteronomy 16:20 is burned into my brain until the end of time. And sometimes people say, how do you remember Deuteronomy 16:20? Well, I have a little trick. I'll tell you my trick. I've never told anyone. Deuteronomy 8:10, right? So 16:20, 8:10 is the line that justifies Birkat Hamazon, the blessing we say after meals. It's V'alchalta v'savata et Adonai Elohecha. Once you have eaten and had your fill, you should bless Adonai your God. That's Deuteronomy 8:10, right? So 8:10 to 1620. You double the numbers.
I said, make him. Yeah, that's
Exactly. So what I think about sometimes, blessing Adonai our God for the food we eat, that's about belief, that's about faith, that's about believing in something bigger than ourselves. And Deuteronomy 16:20, justice, justice shall you pursue, has very little to do with faith and spirituality and belief. It's about the power that I have to bring justice into this world. And when you combine those two, that's Judaism. So that's my little, this is what I walk around. That's how I remember the verses. Nice, right? What are the verses? 8 and 16. See, now you'll remember too. Okay, we're going to continue our service. We are on page 370. I'll ask everyone to please rise. V'zot haTorah asher sa Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai li'ad Moshe al shlosha divarim al shlosha divarim al shlosha divarim ha'olam omed al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim eitz chaim hi le'machazikim ba v'tom heha me'usha diracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. We continue with Aleinu at the bottom of page 586. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latet gedula leotzer bereshit shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot Velo samanu kamishpachot adama Shelo sam chelkenu kahem Vigor aleinu kechol hamonam Vanachnu korim Umistachavim umodim Livnei melech Malchei hamlachim Hakadosh baruch hu V'nemar V'haya Adonai Lemelech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu Yeh Adonai echad Ushemo echad. Larry? Our thoughts turn now to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and every nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, life and death. We recall first those taken from our congregational family in most recent days. Norma Trackman, mother of Rick Kramer, Lawrence Cole, husband of Deborah Cole, and Lawrence Galen, husband of Harlene Galen. As well, we recall at this time those whose yahrzeit we mark this Shabbat. James Comer, Zelda Freimark, Fumika Gonzalez, Marion Goodman, Isaac Grossman, Samuel Grossman, Edith Jameson, Sarah Kempel, Sophie Kaysen, John R. Lowenthal, Ursula Lowenthal, Sidney Marcus, James McGonigal, Edith Orkin, Abraham Rosenberg, Jacob Rotgard, Michael Schaefer, Marilyn Starbecker, Charlotte Tepper, Eugene Walensky, and Rose Zach. If there's a name you'd like to add to this list, someone for whom you say Kaddish, please feel free to do so now as my glance meets yours. In all their names and all their memories, we join together in the hallowed words of Kaddish Yatom, page 598. Yitzgadal v'yitzgadash shemei rabba, v'yalmad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayichon uv'yomechon uv'chayei techol beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabba mivarach le'olam u'lamei almaya, Yitbarak v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, Yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha barichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shloma rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. You may be seated. Announcements. As always, check your email, check Facebook for upcoming synagogue events. We have a 3-part series that's going to be taught by Rabbi Grumbacher. I believe that starts Monday night. Would love to have you join. And we are approaching our high holiday season, so be on the lookout for mailings and information about the high holidays. Slichot is 2 weeks away. 2 weeks from tonight, if you can believe that. I can't believe it either. Any other announcements? Comments? Michael? Slichot is the service that is generally held on the Saturday night prior to the start of the high holidays. So the Saturday night that comes before Rosh Hashanah. And it's traditionally a night of prayer and study. So this last year or two, obviously we've had to do things a little differently, but we will hold Slichot in the sanctuary 2 weeks from tonight. And it'll consist of a service and a little text study. And we conclude by changing the Torah covers to white, which they remain throughout the high holiday season. So it's a really special night, a somber and sort of underspoken kind of night that sort of ushers in our high holiday season. So we'd love to have you there. We'd love to have you all there, of course. Other questions or announcements? Okay, Shirley, your moment has arrived. We can always count on you, Shirley. 644. Oh, and a thank you to our Kiddush is Larry and Michael. Thank you for providing our Kiddush immediately following our service. 644, Hevenu Shalom. Hevenu Shalom Aleichem. Hevenu Shalom Aleichem. Hevenu Shalom Aleichem. Hevenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem. Hevenu Shalom Aleichem. Hevenu Shalom Aleichem. Hevenu Shalom Aleichem. Hevenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem. Shabbat Shalom, friends.